And I believe he's on his chair right now, third place in the tournament.
This is the game. The game was Wei Yi versus Magnus Carlsen. The game was the Armageddon of the 8th round of the FIDE Norway Chess Championship. And in this game, we received a devastating result to the audience. And I don't want to waste all the...
That's a question for later rounds, but for the time being, he has the black pieces. He starts with 7 minutes, but he has draw odds, whereas Wei Yi begins with 10 minutes, and when a draw won't cut the mustard, Wei Yi will have to mix it up.
And Wei Yi does not go for the 4 knights Spanish anymore. That was too quick a draw, too easy a draw for Magnus Carlsen, who now has draw odds. Instead, it's the bishop's opening, with bishop coming out to c4 before the knight. There's a trick in the position. Don't take this pawn. It's poisoned. If you take this pawn on e5, you get checked, and it's a double attack. A check to the king. The knight falls on their next move once you block. This is a very typical pattern that appears in lots of openings. Magnus now will defend his central pawn after Wei Yi has just castled. And there we go. He defends. Slow start to this game, but Wei Yi is going to hope that the tension, the fact that all the pieces will remain on the board for a long time, is going to give him winning chances a bit later.
And that's more important than going for any kind of a direct attack when you're playing with white and when you've got those time odds, those extra 3 minutes on the clock that you start with, that you just aim for a long game, not somewhere where simplifications are easy, not those open positions with open diagonals. So as long as you can keep the tension and then eventually strike, whether it's with a move like d4 or just clamp down with moves like a4, he takes it slow. He first brings the rook into the game, defending the e4 pawn, so setting up d4 ideas. Ask big questions later with little time on the clock for your opponent.
Exactly. That's such a good strategy in Armageddon. When you have that extra time, just keep the tension for as long as possible. Move the rook to e1, drop the bishop back to b3, maybe go knight d2, knight f1, a4. You know, just keep your opponent guessing. Will it be d4? Will it be the knight jumping forward to an f5? Will it be b4, a4, b4? Who knows?
Yeah, Magnus is so slow, though. Like, I've never seen him take this much time over an innocuous move. Like, why would you not castle immediately? Okay, he brings his knight round. He's bringing it over to g6. Cost him a bit of time there, Magnus. He's nearly 4 minutes down on the clock in Armageddon. I'm going to say his Armageddon against Wei Yi in the first half of the tournament was the slowest I've ever seen Magnus, the least energetic. Even in a complicated position, even a promising one, he just looked devoid of any energy at all. And he needs to get some measure of revenge against Wei Yi if he wants to win this tournament here.
And Wei Yi slows down, slightly surprised by Magnus's knight retreat. I think if you get your knight forward, targeting that f7 pawn, Magnus is ready to strike in the center with d5 to block any attacks once the knight is on the side of the board. And Magnus definitely also body language, not just the time he took, does look exactly as you said, you know, just maybe not feeling that firepower that we're so used to seeing from the world number one. Wei, he's got to keep the pressure on the clock. He needs to make decisions faster because this is just the start of the game, right? Magnus's intention's clear. He wants that knight on g6 next.
And the thing is, with this type of position, for white is very flexible. You know, knight bd2, you can drop the bishop back, you can go a4, you can basically do whatever plan you want to do.
But do it fast.
Exactly. Just pick the move you want to play and then just play it. And for Magnus, well, he will need to win this one. He will need to win the Armageddon, either drawing.
Is it a mini success that he's gotten Wei Yi to think for this long and perhaps the clocks have started to sort of level out a little bit? It's still more than a 2-minute advantage.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe that's a psychological thing. Magnus slowed down, confused Wei Yi into slowing down as well. Yeah. White does have tempting jumps, like you said, Tanya, the white knight coming forward to hit this pawn. Maybe ideas of the white queen coming forward to hit this pawn. Maybe just expanding in the center, but you just have to choose. Like, Wei Yi's now spent, 2 minutes on this one move?
Too long for Armageddon.
Yeah, exactly. The player's not adapting.
And they're only on move 7. So you need to sharpen up and play more quickly. Okay, Wei Yi, he's a great player. Let's not write him off so quickly. Especially, he did beat Hikaru, he did beat Magnus Carlsen in the Armageddon.
But he's
Just
got
needs
to
to make
make
a
a
choice.
move. I mean, you can't land yourself in a position where you're on move 7, the clocks are almost level, and your opponent, who happens to be Magnus Carlsen, has got result odds. Queen b3, attacking f7, immediately stop, and now we've got a flurry of moves coming in, David.
Yeah, flurry of moves. The black knight does look a bit clumsy, but it had to blunt this diagonal. The white queen and light squared bishop were staring down at a very vulnerable pawn. It's always the f7 pawn that's highlighted in red there that's vulnerable from move 1 in these e4, e5 openings, but Magnus finally gets castled. Wei Yi, I don't think he should have burned that time there and then. Yes, he's expanded in the center. Maybe he's going to bring his knight round now, but this is just the beginning of the game. He's lost all of his time advantage almost. He's down to 6.5 minutes. He's less than 1 minute ahead. Magnus's long think turning out to have slowed down the whole pace of this game.
Yeah, less than a minute advantage. And that's the thing, right? The last few moves that Wei Yi has played, he should have done it within 30 seconds of the time, right? He took such a long time. Critical decisions lie ahead. Now he's rerouting the bishop back to f1, vacating a square, potentially for his own knight to jump to. Knight c4 ideas.
Yep. Okay. Rook to e8. Magnus is getting ready just to protect the stronghold on e5. a4 from Wei Yi. a5 is the quick response. Okay. But Wei Yi's plan is to put a knight onto c4 at the right time. Is he going to take on e5?
He could do it now.
He jumps in immediately. So the knight is eyeballing this b6 square, also eyeballing e5.
Yeah, I think Magnus might have rushed pushing his pawn to a5. I've noticed this. Magnus, he pushes his own h-pawns, a-pawns, but anytime his opponents do, he always blocks it, like ASAP, as soon as possible. And sometimes that comes with weak squares. So, yeah, of course, this position is still roughly in the balance, but maybe easier for white to play. Some real threats starting to appear.
And if you were to trade on white's terms by taking on d4, you're giving a beautiful center, a lot of flexibility, and I think it's not a happy choice. Magnus does make it. Pawn takes pawn. Perhaps did not have something better fighting against the two threats. White will recapture. Knight b6 still in the air.
Knight b6 might be on his mind initially as well, because he will be taking the black rook, hitting the black queen. Okay, he does jump in.
Good call, David.
Black rook has to move.
Yep. You're not going to step it up to a7 because you're at the risk of isolating that rook for the rest of the game. Rook to b8. Magnus likes to play with his pieces in harmony, but as Dave is highlighting, bishop d2, bishop takes a5 on the agenda. Looking very, very dangerous here for the world number one.
Big threat. Wei Yi just threatening to win a pawn. If he gets one more move here, Magnus needs to do something. Whether he strikes out in the center, whether he tries to maybe trade off this white knight, he needs to move. Magnus now is the one thinking. It always feels like it comes down to the last few seconds, these Armageddons. It's always a time scramble.
But strategically, it looks very tough for black. The threat you highlighted, and let's also mention that white is going to get the bishop pair, even if you don't end up winning that pawn. If Magnus finds a way to defend it, knight takes bishop in an open position with control of the center. A very good start, a very strong start for the white pieces.
And there you see, Magnus does not like that knight. He chases it away, and it gets promptly swapped off. But Wei Yi has the bishop pair, and he also holds the center. So now Wei Yi just has to consolidate and has to just start playing with that extra time he has.
Will Wei Yi even pull a Magnus and go h4, h5 on the other side? Well, h5 you'd still have to prepare, but you know, every time you see h4, you're thinking of Magnus Carlsen these days.
Yeah, why not? I expect him to maybe develop his bishop as well, or I don't know, often you want to improve this piece. I don't know which way you bring your own light squared bishop, which is unchallenged, we should mention, after that exchange there. Wei Yi, though, has slowed down yet again, tanking for almost 1 minute now.
Yeah, and this is not the best strategy there from Wei Yi, because he can make these happy moves. Bishop to d2 was a natural move. Just getting ready to either put the bishop on c3 or just connect the rooks. And then you can make those kind of useful moves like h3, bishop d3, put the rooks in the center. Just make these moves quickly. They can't be wrong. And let Magnus start to untangle.
Because it's not easy for Magnus to sort of reciprocate those kind of moves, to actually improve the position of his pieces. Look at the way Wei Yi's tied down the bishop and the queen to defend a5. Magnus, meanwhile, trying to ease off the pressure. If you're playing for a win, you want to keep the queens on the board.
Yeah, especially against Magnus. Take the queens off, you probably get ground down in an endgame, or at least Magnus will know how to hold that one at the very minimum. It's unthinkable to trade queens here, but it is difficult to keep the queens on while holding d4. You might need to slide to a square such as this one, or if you're going to move away, you need to understand that the black queen cannot jump in without getting trapped.
What do you think? He's keeping it, trading it?
I think he has sacrificed the pawn, and yeah, it happens. And Magnus is going to go d5 just to clarify the center. And yeah, this is the thing. Magnus is so good. He knows when to strike out. He knows when to get those central squares for the knight. And now Wei Yi has to find a way to boot that knight away from its powerful square.
You don't want to pick up the pawn on b2. That's a mousetrap. The queen perhaps does eventually end up getting trapped there, chased down the board. Rook b1. Even if you don't end it because there's queen c3. b7 is hanging in so many positions. Very terrifying to make the decision of queen takes pawn.
Yeah, Magnus instead keeps the status quo. He's going to plant his bishop on a nice square. And yeah, Ivanka here, you're 100% right about this black knight. Either it's just a super strong piece and it's going to control the rest of this middle game, or it might just get trapped. But the problem is the white knight would need to move out the way in order to play the move f3 and win this piece in the center. I really like what Magnus has been doing, and he's been doing it quick. Look at the time, it's almost level now. Wei Yi moves his rook. Magnus also shuffles his rook. Is Magnus getting ready to break out now, maybe with c5? Against the bishop pair, accelerating the play, while Wei Yi isn't quite ready yet. Starting to look very, very solid for black.
It's starting to look good, right? Especially with that counter-strike, as you mentioned, and the knight sitting there beautifully on e4. For Wei Yi, he doesn't have time to go knight to e1, f3, trap the knight, because first up, the knight isn't even trapped, and secondly, c5 is coming. So Wei Yi, does he go knight to d2? Does he try to generate play in other ways? What's he doing? Queen goes back to b1. Okay, so he's lining up the queen and bishop on this light square diagonal.
And Magnus Carlsen strikes in the center. He almost looks like he's the one who's playing for a win here with the piece activity that he has. And look at the speed with which he's playing now. He's up on the clock. He does trade those 2 pawns. But watch out, the bishop on e3, eyeing that queen on b6. There are ideas of knight f5.
And get this, Wei Yi has less time on the clock than Magnus.
Yeah, the last 8-9 moves have really been fantastic for Magnus. Somehow he brought all of his pieces to great squares. He's made some nice progress in the center. Now, maybe he'll trade knights to stop any jumps and then block with his dark squared bishop. If he can trade off everything, maybe just leave black with the queen, knights and rooks, then he should be doing well.
But, you know, with so much tension still on and those trades far away, I think it's still anybody's game, just simply looking at the clock. No increment until move 40, right? And only then you get 1 second, which we've seen time and time again at Norwich chess, is barely enough to even get a move in. Magnus considering, does he trade or does he put his bishop? And look at that. He was frustrated that he's taking so long to make a move.
Yeah, he doesn't feel like he's in the flow, Magnus Carlsen. Knight trade, bishop trade, imminent, and still some work to be done. Expecting Wei Yi to come out. Ooh, blue arrow marks that the white queen now should come back where it came from earlier to allow this trade. And he's going to make his move. There we go.
He finds it, but do remember that Wei Yi is in a must-win situation here. He has to win if he wants to walk away with 1.5 points. And there you can see he's got a slight advantage in the clock, and now it's ticked down. And the position is so active for Magnus. It's going to be very, very difficult to win this one.
You know, but the reaction that we had with Magnus on the camera, it almost looked like he's also fighting himself. Like he had to will himself to make a decision, make a move at that moment. Queen e3 on the board. Magnus does have the option to trade everything on the d4 square, simplify the position, get closer to that draw, which is why Wei doesn't recapture with the queen.
Watch out. Big threat on the board of rook takes knight. Rook takes knight is the threat. So Magnus has to move the queen. He has to defend, and he moves the knight.
Don't take it. The rook is hanging in the center.
Now the white queen overloaded, needs to keep the rook protected. But not just that, the black knight is coming back to a really nice square. That e6 square is a fantastic blockading square and will boot the white rook out of the center.
Can't you take the pawn on d5? Rook takes pawn, queen takes queen, rook takes rook, comes in with a check, but it perhaps would anyway lead to a drawing endgame.
Yeah, tactics. I'll just put this on the board while Wei Yi thinks rook takes pawn, attacks the black queen. If there's a queen trade, rook takes rook comes with a check. Great spot by Tanya here. White is a pawn up, but these doubled pawns at the end of the variation might just start falling off. So big decision. Do you go into this endgame against the endgame maestro Magnus Carlsen, or do you keep rooks on the board? Do you bring your rook across and try to keep the tension?
You keep the tension. You need to keep the tension. That endgame is a draw, and a draw is not good enough in the Armageddon. He does do so. He does come back with the queen, doubling down on the d5 pawn.
Yeah, and he's adding pressure to that pawn. So big threat, rook takes pawn So Magnus will have to deal with that one first. But how does he defend that pawn? And he...
Magnus has blundered. He's blundered his piece.
What? And look at him. He reacts. He can't believe it. The rook was hanging on d8. You could not pick up the rook on d4. And Magnus cannot believe what he's just done.
He just laughed because he couldn't quite believe. He blundered like this.
Oh, and Wei Yi gives up his queen. It's currently a queen for black versus 2 rooks and a bishop. We'll break that down again a bit later in slow motion, but he simply moved his rook away from the defense of his other rook and now faces a lost endgame. This is surely a win for white now. All of white's pieces will combine. He's just outnumbered, Magnus. 3 pieces versus 1, a queen not enough. He's going to try and give some spite checks, but yeah, it's all about the clock now. His only chance, Magnus Carlsen.
It's 13 points to 9 if you do the maths here. Wei Yi in driver's seat, but can he get it done with just 30 seconds on the clock? Magnus coming in with the queens. Wei Yi's king will have to go up the board. Wei Yi looks up to see where is the move count. 40 move, you get an extra second.
Yeah, and now he sets about trying to find himself a hiding place for the white king. That's what Wei Yi has to do, because Magnus's only hope is to keep on giving checks with the queen. And, well, g5, trying to cause chaos.
King can hide on that h2 square. It can also be defended by its own pieces. Wei Yi, he wants to double down on the f7 tender spot. Will he simply slide back? He does it. Some more checks. But f7, you're about to lose that pawn.
There's not too many checks, and wow, the queen comes to h2 with a stamp, but there you see Wei Yi just playing great chess here.
Classy.
He's cut the black king off here. He's going for checkmate. Checkmate in 2 moves threatened. Rook takes pawn, followed by rook coming up to the top of the board. This is over. Magnus just needs to give some checks, pray for a miracle, but the white king is hiding. This one's going to be over any second now.
Wow, it's a king march, and Wei Yi's king will hide on a2. Is Magnus Carlsen about to resign and go down for the second time in an Armageddon against Wei Yi? Norway chess. Rook takes pawn. Rook d8 is the big threat.
Well, Wei Yi doesn't have so much time. 12 seconds on the clock. So if Magnus can keep the black king still alive, there might be a chance to say 6 seconds.
Rook g6. He does it. Rook g8. Undefendable. Magnus Carlsen resigns.
Wow, a huge blunder from Magnus Carlsen deciding this game. Almost unthinkable that the world #1 would do this, but Wei Yi took his chance when it came, and that could be a dagger for Magnus Carlsen's tournament hopes. That half point come the end of the tournament might be vital.
Yeah, absolutely vital there. And Magnus couldn't quite believe it. You know, he started laughing when he realized that his very fancy rook to c2 just didn't work. It just was a complete blunder.
The whole thing just feels like a Magnus Carlsen tilt, right? You're completely in control against Gukesh. You lose that, everything that follows. Play against Hikaru. Beautiful Armageddon, but it wasn't good enough. As you see, Magnus, he walks out. He cannot be happy, but he does stop by, and that's sportsmanship for an interview with Sverre. But Magnus, he cannot be pleased with what has happened. An uncharacteristic one-move piece blunder, a piece drop by the world #1. I haven't seen anything like that by him in a very long time, David.
Yeah, it's been a bad few days for Magnus. I think that's all we can say. And nice to see him stop, though, and give some words to the media there. This position was over because the ladder checkmate, the staircase checkmate, whatever you want to call it, is about to land. The white bishop protects this rook, and the other rook giving the killer blow. Black can give one last check, take a pawn, and the king steps back. But let's break down the blunder from a bit earlier, because this position was the result of a one-move slip from the world #1. It was all the way back here as Magnus leaves the tournament hall. We were talking about the white rook taking this pawn. Magnus thought, okay, he can find a fancy way here to trade rooks. I'm even going to bring it back one more move, because Magnus had just set up a cool tactic. He played his knight back to g5. He wants to plant it back on the e6 square. The knight is untouchable now, because after queen takes knight, the white rook falls, and note how the black rook at the top of the board is defended. But this is no longer the case after Magnus's choice here. Rook to c2. We see the double question mark appear. Magnus there walking into the storm, out in the rain, and he's going to be feeling gloomy, because suddenly the big difference is, no, you don't take the rook when this would just be a trade. The white rook falls, level material. Instead, now you take the knight, which wasn't possible last turn, but it is suddenly available to white, because now the big difference, the black rook at the top of the board, falls with check. And yeah, here instead, we should mention